So in today's session, we are going to extensively look into BRD, Business Requirement Document. Like we have seen, Software Requirement Specification, SRS, which is a subset of BRD. Today, we are going to focus on the higher level documentation, that is the BRD, Business Requirement Document. Now, this document is prepared essentially in the requirement analysis phase, and it captures the requirement at a higher level as in from a perspective of a business. Now, we would try to understand what is this document, why it is needed, and what are the essential things that you are going to uh, document in this particular document, that is business requirement document. So first we will try to understand what and why BRD. So what happened essentially in the initial time, why this BRD came to the picture. So initially what happened that in the earlier 2 decades, maybe 1980s or 1990s, there were major project failure that came into picture in terms of the IT industry context. So one of the reason why the project failed was bad communication between the relevant parties. Now relevant parties here refers to the stakeholders who are associated with the particular project. So in earlier times, what is to happen? The business sponsors or business stakeholder, they used to give their requirement, and that requirement was not in a well documented format. It was like they give some requirements over email, or they sent out some physical copy of the documentation, and that is where the requirements lies. And no one took special initiative to document those requirements. After some years, they realized that something is missing. A relevant document has to be established in and around the artifacts that the business sponsor is providing. Maybe it's a sample Excel format in which they want to see a particular report. Maybe it's a screen mockup in which they would like to see the system. So these were scattered everywhere in and around a particular project. They do not had any linkage. They were just like lying down over there. So what this project managers felt is like there has to be a certain common communication channel, a common document, which should capture all these scattered pieces into one. That is when your business requirement documentation came into the picture, wherein we gathered all the relevant information which all the stakeholders would be needing, their needs, their business objectives, the purpose of the project, the high level view of the project, what is their current system doing, what their expectation is out of the proposed system, how they would like to see the system. Apart from that, the functional requirements, the non-functional requirement, if there are any risks, if there are any assumption, all of these were captured with the help of your business requirement document. Now, this is the single point of reference or single source of reference in any project you see in today's IT landscape. So you would be having the BRD in any project you say, whether it's a change management project, whether it's a fresh product development project, or whether it's a product development from scratch, you would have BRD, that is business requirement documentation. So the other aspect why BRD came into picture is like what used to happen in earlier days is like the customers, the business sponsors, they used to give requirements in any XYZ format, any XYZ documentation. Now, after you have developed that particular system, they used to ask for additional features or additional requirements. And there was no such contract or no such, for that matter, document, which is to clearly indicate that before taking this project, you have requested only for these things. Now you cannot ask additional things. In order to avoid that, and in order to obtain an official approval process, the BRD document came into the picture, wherein whatever you mention in BRD document as within scope, only those would be part of your final deliverable. Rest all would be out of scope. So that is how your BRD document came into the picture. There were other issues as well which were there in project, but the major issue was bad communication between the relevant stakeholder, which this BRD document addresses. Now, BRD document talks about what problems to the business users or business customers want to solve, or what job does the business customer want to accomplish. So it essentially gives a high level view of the business problem as in why they are initiating this particular project, and by executing this particular project, what is the challenge they are addressing and what kind of problem they would be solving. That is the question number one. Question number two is what job the business customer want to accomplish. After they have created this particular project, what would be the significance of this project when this project moves to an operational environment as an and it is open to the end customer for further usage. So what is the job the business customer wants to accomplish? So these two questions are clearly articulated and documented in your business requirement document. Now, we understood a little bit of BRD, like why it is there, what it is supposed to have, the scoping part, the what I would say, the project description, the project brief. Now we would individually explore single elements that are there in a particular BRD. So whatever BRD template you pick up, these would be the common elements that are present in any BRD. Now remember, every organization would be having their own set of templates for creating these documents. So this is a common generic template that we are going to discuss in today's session, and the common elements that are part of these BRD. In real practice or in real project, there would be plus minus some addition or subtraction to the elements that are present in a particular BRD. It completely depends on your organization where you are working and how their templates are structured in and around that particular organizational environment. And also it depends on the project context as well. What is the nature of the project? The BRD document keeps on altering depending on the project context as well. If it's a change management project, then the BRD documentation would be having very less elements. If it's a new development project, the BRD document would be detailed and it would be having all the necessary elements that are supposed to be there. So depending on the nature of the project and the organization, the BRD document elements would differ by nature. But whatever we are discussing in today's session, those are the common elements which would be present in every business requirement document in any organization or irrespective of whatever the nature of the project is. So the very first thing that we are going to see in a typical business requirement document is your problem definition. So it gives a broader overview of what is required or what is the problem to be solved. It essentially describes the business need. Business need is in what is the functionality or what is the outcome the business is trying to solve with the help of the project. For example, to display product information for the website, or to sell products from start to finish, or to order products or materials from suppliers, or customer service processes. So this is the high level business need. Now remember, this is high level because BRD is a high level documentation. Now in order to detail it out, we have software requirement specification or functional requirement specification, which is a subset of BRD. So in BRD, we would be highlighting only the high level business needs, not the detail. For detail, we have SRS, software requirement specification. So in the first section, we would define what is the problem statement and what is the business need. In the next section, we are going to describe who are the stakeholders associated in this particular project and what are their needs. So there are two aspects when you are when you are working as a business analyst in a particular project. There are two aspects by which you see your stakeholder. First aspect is your theoretical aspect, wherein anyone who is impacted by a decision or able to prevent decisive action from occurring. So this is a theoretical aspect which you would be following. But in practice, there is another aspect to the stakeholder or the perception by which you see your stakeholder. So those with vested interest in either the issue or their relationship with those making the decision. So these in I think someone is not on mute. Can I request you please go on mute? Kiran, can you please go on mute? Kiran, can you please go on mute, please? I'm hearing a lot of background noise. Okay. So what I was explaining, the stakeholder and their needs. So when we see the stakeholder, they are essentially two perspectives associated to it. One is your theoretical perspective, what we see, what we read in and around a particular uh, theory in any of the business analysis book. And then there is a practical aspect to it. So in theoretical aspect, it says that anyone who is impacted by decision or able to prevent decisive action from occurring, those are called as stakeholder. Now these stakeholder have specific categories that we are going to explore in a while. Now, in practice, it says those with vested interest in either the issue and or their relationship with those making the decision. Now, this is not a direct practice, I would say, but it is an indirect practice, but you cannot help it out. Now, can anyone tell me what is vested interest? Refer to this picture on the right side, you would get some idea what is vested interest.
Who have invested, the stakeholders who have invested.
Yes, we would always be having a business sponsor, but what is vested interest? Okay, so yeah, please go on. Okay, okay, let me explain. So what happens essentially is like we have some stakeholders who have already invested in the particular project. Now, then we have certain stakeholders who are only accountable for visualizing or tracking the work that has been assigned to an outsourcing company. So let's say an example that Microsoft has outsourced a particular project. They have invested in our company. Now our company is doing their work and they are doing good quality of work. But for some reason, it is not giving the value that is expected out of that investment. So who is the first stakeholder that would raise question on our company's development effort or our company's team? Those are the vested interested investor. So they are not concerned about what is the deliverable or what is the um, track the project is going through, or what are the challenges they are facing, or what are the roadblocks they are facing. They would only be concerned about their invested amount. Ultimately, their goal is to get the benefit out of the investment. That is called as vested interest. They have no interest on how the project is getting executed, or if there are any challenges or roadblock, if there is a valid reason or a justification given for a delay in a particular project. They have no interest in that, but they have only one interest, that is they should get the um, value or the returns out of the investment they make. This is category 1 type of vested interest. Then there is category 2 type of vested interest. Now category 2 type of vested interest is like, you give me this particular thing and I would do a favor to you. So favorism is another kind of vested interest which the stakeholder would do in a typical project landscape. For example, you give me these two resources on loan and I would give you this much amount of productivity or effort. This is also a kind of vested interest practice that is being followed in a particular project. Now, how do we identify a particular stakeholder? So stakeholders are essentially identified with the help of a RACI matrix. Now RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So basis on these four parameters, we identify all our stakeholders and assign them one of these categories. Either the stakeholder is responsible or accountable or consulted or informed. Now what is responsible? So this person who does the work to achieve the task, they have responsibility for getting the work done or decision made. As a rule, this is one person. Example might be a business analyst or an application developer or a technical architect. Now, business analyst is responsible for gathering requirements. Application developer is responsible for developing the application. Technical architect is responsible for doing the architectural stuff for that particular project. So he is responsible for a particular activity. Now, what is accountable then? So the person who is accountable for the correct and thorough completion of the task. This must be one person is often the project executive or the project sponsor. So this is the role that responsible is accountable to and approves their work. Now, if you consider a particular project executive or a project sponsor, they actually do not do any of the stuff which BA does or application developer does or technical architect does, but they are accountable for delivering that particular project. Now, if a particular project fails for any XYZ reason, they won't ask who is responsible. They would always ask who is accountable, the project executive and the project sponsor. Your BA, your developer, your technical architect, they would never ever be questioned. Now, who has the right to question them? This project executive and project sponsor to get the valid justification. But if in case a project fails, then project executive and project sponsor are the first person who would be questioned. So accountability lies, has a very important significance when it comes to comparison between responsible and accountable. Now, does that mean that project executive and project sponsor won't be responsible for anything? Yes, they would be responsible for something. For example, tracking the project status or monitoring the project status. So those two activities, those three activities, planning, tracking, and monitoring, are the responsibilities of the project executive and project sponsor. However, their accountability is to deliver the entire project from analysis to development to QA till UI. Then there is a role called as consultant. Now these are the people who provide information for the projects with whom there is two-way communication. So there are several people or different subject matter experts who are consulted when you are working in a project context in a typical IT project. For example, if you are going for a particular meeting for a focus group session wherein your intention is to gather some of the requirements in and around a particular domain, and since it's a focus group session, you would be inviting all the subject matter experts, all the concerned people who are aware of that particular domain. So what essentially you are doing, you are consulting them over there. They may be related to your project, the participants may not be related to your project. In that case, we call that particular person as expert judge, and the technique is called as expert judgment. So let's say you are working as a business analyst in a particular domain. Now you have 2-3 options in front of you. Now how would you rank those 2-3 options, or how would you obtain the benchmark between those 2-3 options, that this is the best option that we have chosen? With the help of external person or the external judge, you would be applying external judgment technique. Now what essentially you are doing over there, you are essentially consulting that external person or external subject matter expert. You are capturing their viewpoint. So this is the third role in a particular RACI contract. Then the fourth role is your informed role. So these people are kept informed. So they are not that much concerned about how the project works, or how the business analyst is gathering requirement, or how the developer are developing the requirement, or how the QA is performing testing. They are only concerned about the status of the project, whether the project is working as per the needed timelines or not. So those person are called as informed person. For example, in a typical project, your delivery manager, your delivery head, your business unit head, these are the person to whom you would always keep informing. Now, what you would be informing them, not the requirement document or the code or the test cases. You would be informing only about the project status. And essentially, in most of the cases, the accountable person, like the project manager or project executive, does the informing part. You, as a business analyst, there would be very few scenarios wherein you would directly interacting with the informed person. Yes, if you are working in an offshore onshore model, then you may be having certain stakeholders to whom you would like to keep informed. So how you would be keeping them informed? By adding them in BCC when you are sending any email. Whatever important communication you are having, add them on BCC. So that way you are keeping them informed. So these are the four roles that you would see when you are identifying a particular stakeholder, basis on which you would be creating a RACI matrix or RACI model. Now, these are the guidelines for creating a RACI matrix, like identify all the tasks involved in delivering a particular project and list them on the left-hand side of the chart in the completion order. So whenever you are creating a RACI matrix, so whatever the task it is, like development or requirement analysis or test planning, test strategy, all those tasks would be listed in the left-hand side. After that, you have to identify all the project role and list them along the top of the chart. Towards the left would be the list of tasks. Towards the top, you would be having all the project roles in a particular chart. After that, you have to go on identifying each of these roles and the tasks, and depending on that, you would associate them with a responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed. So essentially, your RACI matrix looks like this. For example, we say a task 1, project executive is consulted, project manager is accountable or responsible, business analyst is consulted, technical architect is informed, application developer is informed. Now task 2 is again project executive is accountable. So for every task, the respective stakeholders or respective user would have a specific role to play, like consulted, accountable, responsible, consulted, informed, and so on. Now there is something. Yeah, please go on with your question.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give a small example of how a task would look like?
Okay, that we'll see in a while. I'll give you an example. Okay,
Okay.
let me finish with this explanation. Okay, so what I was saying, that there would be a certain list of tasks, and for every task there would be something called as consulted, accountable, responsible, consulted, informed. Now if you see this particular grid closely, you would find something. Now can anyone tell me what is that specific thing that you are finding in this particular grid? Just scan the it row by row, 1 2 3 4. You would find very important information. Take your time. Okay, let me give you a hint. It has something to do with accountability. No, that's fine, but there is something else in this grid.
It's always or usually the project executive or the project manager who is accountable and not the others.
Not necessarily. Okay, if you see this grid closely, if I consider task 1, there are two-person being consulted, two-person being informed, but there is only one accountable and responsible. If you consider task 2, there are multiple people being informed. There is again one person being consulted, but the accountable and responsible in one. In task 3, there is project executive who is accountable. Project manager is informed. Application developers are informed. Then technical architect is being consulted, but responsible is one. Task 4 is like consulted by project executive. Project manager is being accountable. Business analyst is informed and technical architect is responsible, and your application developers are informed. So in a given task, only one accountable and only one responsible would always be there. You cannot share your accountability or responsibility. However, you can share your whether you want to be informed or not. That is optional to you. You could inform multiple people. You could consult with multiple people, but accountability and responsibility lies with only 2% for a given particular task. You cannot share the accountability and responsibility. In a given task, there would only one person who is accountable and responsible. You cannot have 2% held accountable for one particular activity, or 2% held responsible for one particular activity. So that's the difference in this particular grid. Now, in order to see an example, let me open an Excel sheet. So these are my tasks. So let's say requirement analysis. Then I have application development. You are able to see this Excel sheet, right? Everyone. Then we have quality assurance. Then we have delivery. Then we have sign off. So let's say the project name is BSI portal. Now this is the task. Now I would highlight the roles with the role name. So first role is your business sponsor. Let me take that role. Next would be what I would say project manager. So let me give that role to Kshitij. Next we have business analyst. Let me give that role to Shirley. Next role is your application developer. Let me give that role to Shirley. Next role is quality assurance. Let me give that particular role to Kshitij. So we have these 5 roles. And we have a list of tasks over here. So these are the 4 tasks that we need to identify who would be responsible, who would be accountable, who would be consulted, and who would be informed. So let's say requirement analysis. Now, can anyone tell me who should be accountable for it? Requirement analysis.
Project manager.
Okay. Who should be responsible for it? Halim. Now, while I am doing my business analysis activity, who all can I consult? Yes. Now, who should be kept informed?
Application.
And your quality assurance as well. Now, let's go to task 2, application development. Who is accountable? Yes. Who is responsible?
Application dev.
Who should be consulted?
Business.
Business analyst.
And informed would be your business sponsor and quality assurance. Similarly, for quality assurance, who should be accountable? Project manager.
Project
Who should be
manager.
responsible? This thing,
Quality
quality assurance.
assurance.
Who should be consulted? Business analyst. And they
Business
would be
analyst.
informed. So similarly, you could create a task list depending on this, and you could identify who is accountable, who should be responsible, who should be informed, and who should be consulted. Now, when it comes to RACI matrix, there are other variation as well. So we have something RSI, RASCI. RSI stands for responsible, sponsor, and informed. RASCI stands for support additionally. RACIO stands for O is out of loop or omitted. So depending on the project context, these are some of the flavors that you would find to the RACI matrix. But in general, we use this form of RACI matrix in any of the projects. Now, third element in business requirement document is your scope. So scope is essentially the limits or the boundaries of your project. Boundaries as in what is the context of the project, what is the overall scope of that particular project at a higher level. For example, you are developing a particular portal. You would first understand that particular portal at a very high level, like will it be a intranet portal, or will it be a web-based application, or will it support cross-platform devices like your cell phones or tablets or any XYZ platforms. You have to identify the scope of it. So whatever you identify within the scope is called as in scope, and whatever you feel that is not part of the system is essentially referred to as out of scope. So in scope is something that is you are going to deliver after the project has been completed, and out of scope is something that you are not going to deliver and clearly mention in your business requirement document that this is something that we are not going to deliver to the end customer. And in scope is like it's a contract that this is something that we are going to deliver. So you as a business analyst have to do a lot of negotiation along with your project manager and whoever is the stakeholder, like your technical stakeholder or any subject matter expert around defining the in scope element, because this is the element basis on which you would be giving your efforts and timeline for that particular project. And out of scope is something that you are not going to entertain at any cost in that particular scope. Now, what happens essentially is what business does is like they tend to creep the scope. So initially they would agree that okay, this is the scope, but later on they would say okay, depending on your requirement statement, I feel you should also be including this in the scope. So what you could do as a business analyst is like clear and write clear and concise requirement. You need not to write ambiguous requirement. For example, your business stakeholder asks you, can you make the website look more web 2.0? So you say, as a developer, okay, I can add a shiny button. So your business stakeholder says, okay. So when you say, I can add a shiny button, you have an attitude that you never say no to your business stakeholder. As a business analyst, you tend to explore the options or opportunities in and around the given statement. Then you gave him a solution. I can add a shiny button. But that shiny button do not have a scope. It do not have a defined scope. What is shiny? Shiny is an ambiguous statement. So the business stakeholder said, okay, but when it comes to actual deliverable, what the business stakeholder would ask you, not the shiny button. He would say, make the website look more 2.0. Web 2.0. Now, Web 2.0 is a whole, what I would say, whole big framework in itself. Now, you settle down at a shiny button, but what his expectation is Web 2.0. So, this is how your scope creeping starts. So whenever you interact with your particular business sponsor or stakeholder, interact in clear language, in clear definition, that we do not expect this. We can deliver only this thing that is within scope. If you do not intact your scope, it would not only impact your requirement analysis, but would also add additional time to the development effort or your QA effort. I have seen many projects have gone through this scope creep. And what happened ultimately is like BA spent from morning 7 till late night 12, but the development team was the most suffering people in the particular project. They has to come in Saturdays and Sundays as well to work in that particular project. So as a business analyst, it's your responsibility to clearly define in scope and out scope in a particular business requirement document. Don't ever let your team suffer, because ultimately the team would come to you asking questions. So take that thing into consideration when you are writing requirements. Now the fourth part is, or the fourth element is your business process overview when you are writing a BRD. So whenever you are writing a BRD, there are two important things that you need to consider. The as-is model, which is your problem, and the to-be model. What is the solution you are giving to that particular problem? So these are essentially the process flows, which is a pictorial representation of your system that you create for both as-is model and to-be model. So you have to clearly identify which are the problem areas in that as-is model, and you have to clearly indicate which are the scope of improvement in that particular to-be solution which you are giving. So this we are going to explore more in tomorrow's session, business process modeling, how to create them. But this is how it does essentially your business process overview. So essentially these are two diagrams. One diagram indicates the current system, that is their problem, and the other diagram indicates the solution system, which is the proposed system view that you would be giving them. Now the fifth element is your business objective, like starting with a parent requirement. Then the easiest way to think of this is to ask yourself, so what is the objective of the website? So whatever the business objective they have, you have to document it, like we have seen in our business case. Then what are the available resource, whether for the project website requirement, what are the softwares that are available, how many license copy we would be needing, hardware thing, then templates, content, any XYZ physical resource or digital resource that are needed for that particular project, you would be highlighting in this section. After that, you would be highlighting the constraints, which is your risk and issues. So can anyone give me an example of a risk for a particular project? Any example that comes into your mind? Yes, that's a risk. Okay, on that line, can anyone give me an example of issue? Yes, absolutely. So risk is an unforeseen situation that might happen in a particular project. For example, your project needs a specialized skill set of resource like Salesforce, which are on huge demand. Now you don't know whether whom you have hired in that particular project and who has taken that particular responsibility of developing that application. He may leave anytime your organization. So if he leaves, what is the cost of his substitution? So cost of his substitution as in how much a new resource would cost, and what is the cost of time, how much time it would take for that new resource to scale up to that particular environment and start delivering the deliverables. So that is something you have to clearly articulate in the risk section. So essentially this is a risk management plan. So if such unforeseen situation happens, then what is your risk management plan or what is your risk mitigation plan? That is something you have to highlight in your business requirement document. Again, when you are creating this business requirement document in and around risk and issues, always ensure you consult your senior stakeholders like your project manager or your project board. So they could give you fair estimates in and around the risk and the issues. Now, issues is something like if a network failure happened in a particular day, what is the service level agreement you have? For example, all of a sudden the server went down. The entire day went unproductive. So unproductive as if there are 40 resources, so 40 into 8. So that many number of hours are wasted in that single day itself. So if such issues happen, which are not under our control, what is your risk management plan or what is your risk mitigation plan? So that is something you have to highlight in this constraint section. After that, there are certain list of assumptions. Now, when we are doing scope modeling or when we are identifying the in-scope item and out-of-scope item, so there are certain items wherein we are not clear about the requirement at the first place itself. So what we tend to do is we tend to assume things. So if you find such assumption in your particular project that is about to be executed, you have to highlight those assumptions in this format. So that would be a list of assumption. For example, the video on demand website will be free of charge to users and will not rely on registration for the service. So the comment is believed by brand marketing to be the case. Now here they say the video on demand website will be free of charge to user and will not rely on registration for the service. At this point of time, they are considering it as free of charge. But tomorrow that may be a case that they would start charging their registration for the usage of their service. So in that case, the scope would change so that now it is free of charge. There is no payment gateway involved. There is nothing in between. But the moment they make it as paid, they would be involving the inclusion of your payment gateway system. So that would increase your efforts and time for development. So you have to highlight the assumption in this way. The second case is like the new website will allow 10-second ads to be inserted into video clips on the fly. Now this 10 seconds is an assumption. It may include to 20 seconds or 30 seconds as well. So you could add some comment that if this time frame is increasing, then to accommodate that modification or change in the system, you would be needing additional effort or time. So these are certain things that you need to highlight as part of your list of assumption. Now where you got this assumption, you have to mention in the comment. For example, brand marketing or research or whatever is the source of knowledge, you have to list down those assumptions. So at a later point of time, if business would like or the business sponsor would like to develop this feature, then that would be treated as change request, not as part of your core project. Then there are certain requirements at a high level that you need to include in the business requirement document. So specific requirements are the business or project objectives broken down into specific tasks. You may have gone down too far in your business objective, in which case you could copy and paste this particular specific requirement. So it would be a combination of functional and non-functional requirement, but it would be user-centric requirement. For example, a particular user would give you specific requirement. Other than that, you would be having functional requirement and non-functional requirement. So we have already explored what are functional and non-functional requirements. So I won't explain it again. You can refer that session video for your reference purpose. After that, you would be having a section called as conclusion. So here you would essentially do your introduction, but from another angle. Another angle as in whatever you have explored so far in your business requirement document, the business need, the business objective, the business process overview, the RACI matrix, you would give your conclusion, that what you conclude about this particular um, end-to-end project document or the project scope or the project content. That is the conclusion that you are going to write. After that, if you are writing some terms like any jargon that you are using throughout your business requirement document, then you have to highlight those in the glossary section. After that, bibliography would contain the source of information that you have referred. For example, if you are referring Wikipedia or any XYZ website for creating this business requirement document, you have to clearly articulate where you found that particular information. So that particular thing would come under bibliography. So these were the essential 14 elements that you would find in any BRD that you pick up. Again, depending on your company or depending on your project environment, there would always be an inclusion or exclusion on in and around this element. So it again depends on your project nature and your what I would say company environment. Now, can anyone tell me, if you are working as a business analyst or you just join your organization and someone asks you to write a business requirement document, what's the first thing that you would ask them?
Who are the stakeholders and the business sponsors for this project?
Won't you ask them a BRD template first?
Oh, yes.
So BRD template is something that you are going to ask them at the first place when someone asks you to write a business requirement document. As I said, there would always be addition and inclusion and exclusion to this element section. You need to first understand what are their section before moving further with your stakeholder analysis and all those stuff. You would first ask them a business requirement document template. After that only you would start exploring and populating these sections within BRD. Now there are other flavors of BRD as well. Can anyone tell me which are those flavors? Other variants of BRD? Any specific name you have heard somewhere? In fact, we have already covered a session on that.
A business case?
Business case may not be considered as a substitute for BRD, but yes, partially it influences. Yes. So the other variants of BRD is request for proposal, system requirement document, and your functional specification document. So request for proposal comes first in sequence, then comes business requirement document, and then comes this subset document, system requirement document or functional requirement document. So the hierarchy is like number 1 RFP, number 2 BRD, number 3 SRD or FSD. Okay, now what are the best practices for writing a BRD? So how we would ensure that we write a well documented, well articulated BRD when we are doing a when we are accountable for writing a particular business requirement document. So business analysts should always be very careful while preparing the BRD document. By following some of the simple guidelines, we should be able to achieve that thing. Now, what are those simple steps that we need to follow? Step 1 is try to create your own format or download a template. Like I already told you, the first thing that you are going to ask to your project sponsor or your project manager when someone asks you to write a BRD is a template. If it is not available, you could refer in the public domain and create your own template. Don't even start writing the BRD without a template. Since you are referring to a particular template, this document would already contain some sections like overview, definition, risk, dependencies, term and supplementary information, etc. So you need not to explore more around these sections. You already have a fair understanding of what is expected around that particular section. And depending on your findings, you could start populating it. Now you have to use pictures in your BRD document. For example, if you have any specific presentation or specific Excel sheets or charts that you have prepared, depending on the research work that you have created, you could attach them in the BRD clearly. Now, attaching them doesn't mean you have to take a snapshot of it. You have to add an object to that Word file and attach inside that particular document. So the person who is reading your business requirement document is aware that there is some research work associated with it, with this particular BRD document. Now, step 2 is like, as a BA, you must define the scope of the project. Like I said, always ensure the scope of the project is intact. Clearly articulate your in-scope item and out-of-scope item. Never ever confuse you yourself or your team in terms of creeping the particular scope. Always keep your scope intact. So that gives a fair visibility of the funding aspect. I mean, how much funding is required for this project in terms of efforts and time. Now, third step is always communicate with your stakeholder to have a clear view of the particular requirement. So whoever is the stakeholder, depending on the RACI matrix, identify the stakeholder and keep them informed, consulted, responsible, accountable. It's up to you. You have to take that necessary measure. Always keep your stakeholders communicated and informed about your decision. Step 4 is try to review the past project so that you can check present requirement which may be similar to your existing project. Like in my earlier session, I told you that as a business analyst, if the project is in similar line, you are supposed to research on the past project, basis on which you could get some pointers to include in your BRD or your FRD, which is being executed or is about to be executed in the similar line. Now, there is a special technique that is used when you are doing to review your past project. Can anyone recollect what is that technique which we discussed? This line, try to review past project. It has a technique associated to it, and we have already discussed. Can anyone recollect what is that technique? It's very simple. No, it's document analysis. I have explained you document analysis, wherein we review the past project document. So the technique that you are going to use over here is document analysis, of course, with other techniques like researching. So that's the reason why I say take the online test. Anyways, coming to step 5, once the first draft of your business requirement document is created, distribute it for multiple reviews and inputs. So whenever you are writing BRD in a particular project, you always take constant feedback from the particular stakeholders who are involved in that particular business requirement writing process. So what benefit you would get out of it is like you would be having constant feedback in and around that particular document. So never ever expect that whatever BRD you have written would be approved then and there itself. There would be multiple rounds of approval into that particular BRD, and there would be multiple changes requested in that particular BRD. I have seen people, the business analysts, they are creating near about 25 to 30 versions of the BRD within 3 months of time. Why? Because there are multiple requests being made to update in that particular BRD. And when you are updating a BRD, essentially you are creating dash of it. What is that dash? We have already discussed. Version of it. Whenever we are updating any artifact in business analysis context, we essentially create a version of it. So that is part of your version. So whenever you are getting this particular requirement document approved, uh, the final one, that would be the final BRD which would go to your development team. Before that, whatever the versions that you create, that would be part of your BRD versioning. Like today you start writing a BRD, next week you submit it, then it comes to me for approval. I request some changes, you would create a new version of it. New version as in whatever changes I have requested you, you would add those changes and you would create a new version of it. The other day, someone else may ask a change, the respective stakeholder. So the third version, similarly 4, 5, 6, 7, n number of versions would be created for that particular BRD. And that particular process is called as versioning in business analysis content. Finally, make sure your technical teams to follow the documents throughout the project so that project moves in a smoother way. So once you have completed writing your BRD, always ensure you create a spec review meeting with your developers and the quality assurance people. In that spec review meeting, you make them walk through the BRD that you have written. If there are any open question, it's your responsibility as a business analyst to get it clarified from the business sponsors and pass it on to the development team. So that's all. Any questions so far? Anyone?
While creating several versions and doing modifications, are we going to ask the developers and the QA team as well to suggest any changes to the BRD,
Essentially
or
what
just the
happens,
sponsors?
essentially there are two things associated, or rather two stages associated with it. One stage is before development, when you are in analysis phase. So when you are requesting change in analysis phase, at that time developers are not involved. So once the development starts, then when you are discussing with it and the development teams ask for a change, then that would be a BRD updation basis on the developer feedback, because developer is also a stakeholder. So if he has a valuable idea, then he has to be appreciated for it. So it depends on at what phase the change is requested, during the analysis phase or after the analysis phase has been completed and the project has already started with development.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, please go on.
Hello? Yeah, BRD is a part of waterfall, right?
Not necessarily. Essentially, it is associated with waterfall, but these days people create a mini version of BRD in agile projects, or they create something called as PRT. PRD is your product requirement document, which is similar to BRD.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the difference between BRD and FRD?
See, FRD is your functional requirement document. So FRD is a subset of BRD. So BRD, you define the functional and non-functional requirement at a very high level. In FRD, you detail it out. You have to support it with other artifacts like your data dictionary, your database modeling, physical schema, conceptual schema. Essentially a language which would be well understood by the development team. So BRD is a document for the business users and FRD is a document for the technical users. So you can relate it this way. Okay, now we'll see a sample BRD. So first we'll start with a template and then we will go to a actual BRD. So this is the BRD template which you are going to use for your project work. I would be uploading it in that particular portal, so you can download it from there. This is how it looks like. First section would be a document revision, wherein you would be having all the versioning details, like when you created your initial draft, second revision, third revision, final approval, those dates and the version number. Then would be your approvals, depending on your project sponsor, his name, his title, his signature, and on what date he has approved it. So remember, whenever you are dealing with a BRD, it's mandate that whoever stakeholders are listed over here, you have to get approval from all of these stakeholders. The dates can be different, the timelines can be different, but you have to ensure everyone has signed off this particular document. After that, you have to give the objectives around the project. What is the objective? What's the project is intended for? The background of the project. If there are additional sections, then you have to populate those sections as well. So depending on the project context and project needs, the section may increase or decrease. Then you have to identify the project scope, define what is the project scope, what are the in-scope functionalities, what are the out-of-scope functionalities. You have to clearly define them. Then you have to define the system perspective. Depending on this nature of the project, what are your assumption, what are the constraints, and what are the risks that you see in this particular project. And if there are any issues, then highlight them. If you don't see any issues, simply delete this section. So whatever section you feel irrelevant, there aren't any such thing that is not going to happen in this particular project, you can go ahead and delete it. Then you have the business process overview, wherein you document the current as-is process and how the system would look like a to-be process. So these two are the important diagrams that you have to include, without which your BRD is not complete. As-is model and to-be model. If there are any sub-processes, then you have to include them. For example, in as-is model, there is only one process, and to-be model, there can be multiple processes. You have to include them in your BRD. After that, you have your business requirements from a user's perspective. These are the specific requirements which we talked in our slides. So these are those specific requirements. After that, you can write your functional requirement documents and your other requirements, like your non-functional requirements, like security requirements, reporting requirements, usability requirement, audit requirement. These are nothing but your NFR, non-functional requirements. You have to write. Now you may include a separate category of requirement for NFR. That also you could do. Now essentially there are certain functional requirements which also falls under security, reporting, usability, and audit. So you have to take that special attention around how to categorize them as functional requirement and non-functional requirement. That is completely your call. Basis on discussion with the development team, you have to come to a conclusion whether to include it as a part of your functional requirement or non-functional requirement. So non-functional requirement would be like this, would be having a threshold, like the WINS repository shall accommodate up to 100 users concurrently. So this is purely non-functional requirement. Whereas if you see the requirement over here, audit requirement, which are considered as an functional requirement, they say any change to a widget name record shall be appended with a user ID and date time stamp. So although it looks like a non-functional requirement, but it's a functional requirement. It has a functional value to the business user. So you have to identify such requirements. After that, you have all these acronyms, glossary, bibliography. So the name may differ. Acronyms can be replaced by some other names. Related document can be replaced by bibliography, and so on. So this is the very basic set of business requirement document. Now, out of these specific requirement or the business requirement, basis on the categorization of requirement, Each single requirement can be detailed out in a special functional specification document. Each of these requirements can have one FSD associated to it. So one BRD can have multiple FSD. It's not that there would be only one BRD and only one FSD. BRD will always be one in a particular project, but functional specification document can be n number of, depending on the scope which you have created. BRD would always be one, but FSD can be many in a particular project. After that, how this particular BRD looks like. So this is a sample project. Where is that project? So this is an actual project business requirement document. Remember, BRD are always a heavyweight document. It would be having multiple pages onto it. So it's 126 pages. Although it's not 126 pages, it's more than that. I have cut down some of the section in it. This is how it looks like. Executive summary can also be a part of business requirement document. So it's a specific banking application BRD document that we are going to. So we have all this document, sections. We have all the purpose highlighted over here. So this is how your actual BRD looks like. So I would be uploading this copy as well in that particular shared drive. You can download it and you could review it basis on your understanding. You have to create a business requirement document for our project. So this is how your list of requirement actually appears in a typical BRD in actual project. So it's a lengthy document. Take your time and go through this particular document, BRD.